Hello, traveler. You know what I've noticed? Sometimes the problem isn't what someone says to you. It is not about the words they choose or even the message they're trying to deliver. No, the real issue is how they say it. The way their voice moves through the air, the tone they carry, the energy behind every syllable. Because here is the thing. The human voice is one of the most powerful tools we have. It can soothe you when you are anxious. It can persuade you when you are uncertain. It can intimidate you when you are vulnerable. And yes, it can absolutely manipulate you. And what makes this truly unsettling, what keeps me up at night sometimes, is that most people who are being manipulated through someone's tone of voice don't even realize it is happening. They think they're just having a conversation. They think they're connecting with someone. But underneath it all, there is a psychological game being played, and they're losing without even knowing they're on the field. And that brings us to today's lesson. I want to show you 4 specific tones of voice that function as emotional warning signs. These aren't just personality quirks or communication styles, traveler. These are deliberate strategies of psychological control. When someone speaks to you using any of these 4 tones, that is when you need to turn on that red light inside your mind. You need to pay attention, because understanding these patterns, recognizing them in real time, that is your first step toward protecting yourself from emotional traps that can damage your mental health, your relationships, and your sense of self. So come with me. Let's explore this together. First, let's talk about someone you might know. That person who seems almost too sweet to be real. You know who I am talking about. The one who speaks with this theatrical enthusiasm, this over-the-top excitement in their voice. They're constantly praising you, complimenting you with every other sentence, acting like they've just discovered their soulmate, standing right in front of them. Everything about their tone drips with honey. This is what I call the saccharine tone, the artificial sweetness of human relationships. And in the psychology of abusive relationships, this behavior has a name: love bombing. It is a classic manipulation technique, and the saccharine tone is its delivery system. What love bombing does is create this intense, almost intoxicating sensation of connection and dependency. The victim, and yes, that is the right word, feels like they've found someone truly special, someone who sees them in a way no one else ever has. And with that feeling comes an emotional debt. You start to feel like you owe this person something because they've made you feel so valued, so seen, so special. But here is what you need to understand. That excessive sweetness serves a very specific function. It is designed to make you vulnerable. The person using this tone creates such a warm, welcoming emotional climate that you naturally lower your defenses. You open up. You trust. You become emotionally available in ways you normally wouldn't be with someone you just met. And then, when they start showing their true behavior, which is often far more controlling, far colder or far more aggressive than that initial sweetness suggested, you are already too emotionally invested to leave. You are caught in the trap. The saccharine tone is actually quite easy to identify once you know what to look for. It is too enthusiastic, too gentle, too fast. The progression of intimacy doesn't match normal human bonding patterns. If you ever feel like someone is selling you a perfect version of themselves, like they're performing the role of your ideal person, rather than actually being themselves, that is your signal. Open your eyes wide and pay attention. Now imagine someone completely different. Someone who always speaks with this heavy, sad, dragging quality to their voice. Every word sounds like it is being pulled through exhaustion and suffering. It is as if the entire world is constantly working against them, and their tone makes sure you know it. Each sentence comes out like a sigh of pure pain. This is what I call the martyr tone, and it is far more manipulative than most people realize. The martyr tone is dangerous specifically because it makes the manipulator appear to be the victim. But in reality, what they're doing is constructing a psychological scenario where you become responsible for their happiness, for their emotional well-being, for their entire sense of worth. And that is a weight no person should ever have to carry for another adult. It is an unfair burden that leads to resentment, exhaustion, and the slow erosion of your own emotional health. The third tone is probably the easiest to recognize on the surface, but it is also one of the most paralyzing. This is the loud voice, the harsh words, the accelerated rhythm, and that unmistakable energy of threat hanging in the air. The goal here isn't dialogue. It is not communication. It is dominance, pure and simple. Neuroscience actually explains this reaction really well. When someone speaks to us in an aggressive tone, our brain interprets that as a genuine threat to our safety. The limbic system, that is the emotional processing center of your brain, immediately activates what is called the fight, flight, or freeze response. What happens in that moment is that you stop thinking clearly. Your rational mind takes a back seat, and you start reacting instinctively, emotionally, without the benefit of your full cognitive abilities. Research by Joseph Ledoux on fear processing shows us that this type of vocal stimulus can literally shut down logical reasoning for several seconds. And that is exactly what the manipulator wants. They want to overwhelm you emotionally so that you either shut down completely or give in to whatever they're demanding. That is why when someone starts yelling or using a voice that is loaded with anger and aggression, the intention is rarely about actually resolving anything. What they want is to impose control, to win the interaction through intimidation. Because nobody yells to clarify a situation. Nobody raises their voice in anger to reach mutual understanding. People yell to win. People yell to dominate. And when you understand that, you can start to protect yourself from it. Now, this last one is perhaps the most silently cruel tone of all. The monotone voice, a voice completely stripped of emotion, drained of energy, delivered with an almost indifferent quality. And yet it communicates one of the clearest, most painful messages possible. You don't matter. This is a form of subtle psychological violence that cuts deep. The manipulator uses emotional silence as a form of punishment. This is most common during what is called the devaluation phase in abusive relationships. This is the stage that comes after they've idealized you, after they've won you over, after you are emotionally invested. That is when they start to ignore you emotionally. They go cold, and research shows us that this contempt, this deliberate withdrawal of emotional availability, is one of the strongest predictors of relationship breakdown and psychological suffering. The cold voice, completely absent of human warmth, is used strategically to create insecurity in you. You start to feel like you've done something wrong, though you can't quite identify what. So you try to reconnect. You reach out. You work harder and harder to earn back the attention you've lost, to deserve once again the warmth that was once freely given. And in this dynamic, the manipulator's silence speaks volumes. The message it sends is devastating. You don't even deserve my emotion. You are not worth my feelings. But remember this truth: nobody who genuinely cares about you punishes you with indifference. That is not love. That is not respect. That is control. Now that you understand these 4 manipulative tones, the overly sweet, the suffering martyr, the aggressive dominator, and the cold indifference, we come to the most important part of today's lesson. How do you actually protect yourself? I want to teach you a technique that is simple but incredibly powerful. I call it the 3-second power pause. Here is how it works. It is beautifully simple. When you notice any of these tones, whether it is someone being too sweet, playing the victim, getting aggressive, or going ice cold, don't respond immediately. Don't react. Just stop. Pause for 3 full seconds. During that pause, during those 3 precious seconds, ask yourself these questions. Does this person's tone match what they're actually saying? Does their tone match the situation we're in? How do I feel right now in this moment? Do I feel pressured? Do I feel guilty? Do I feel intimidated or somehow inferior? And finally, what might be this person's intention in speaking to me this way? These 3 seconds, these wonderful, protective 3 seconds, give your brain the time it needs to shift from emotional mode back to rational mode. Research in the neuropsychology of self-regulation shows us that small conscious pauses help reactivate the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain responsible for logical decision-making. and self-control. When you take this pause, you can see the game being played, and once you see it clearly, you get to choose whether you want to keep playing or walk away from the board entirely. So the next time someone speaks to you in one of these ways, too sweet, too suffering, too angry, or too indifferent, pay attention. Really pay attention, because the tone of voice is like an emotional fingerprint. It reveals what the words are trying to hide. Not everyone who speaks beautifully has good intentions. Not everyone who speaks calmly is actually at peace. And not everyone who speaks with pain is innocent in the situation. But here is your power. You don't have to react immediately. You don't need to explain yourself, justify your feelings, or defend your position right away. Just breathe. Count to 3. And observe what is really happening. Because when you learn to hear what is behind the voice, when you develop that skill of listening to tone as much as content, nobody can manipulate you with their voice anymore. Stay safe, traveler. I'll see you on our next journey.